Yo, what's up, everybody? It's me, Tim Keys. Today, I want to talk about these rack extensions. These are older rack extensions that have been out for quite some time, and I want to discuss, my thoughts on the usefulness for today's modern music and the stuff that we have now in terms of technology. So, yeah, man, let's get started. I got four of them up. I might do five, but let's get started. I got Predator. Now, Predator came out back in 2007 as a VST, came out as a rack extension back in 2012, and in my opinion, it was pretty good at the time for what it was. A very capable synthesizer. It sounded good. A lot of the presets were geared more towards dance music of that time, because again, it was 2007 when this was initially built. But it's very capable as a device, and even though they have Predator 3 out as a VST, there's a lot of stuff that this is still capable of doing. There isn't much missing between this and the VST version of the new update. So let's talk about it. First, we got three oscillators. You got over 190 waveforms to choose from. You have the ability to, set your synthesizer to be free running, which basically, if you know anything about synthesizers and old analog gear, your waveforms never began in the same spot every time you press a key on the keyboard. It always was at a different spot because that oscillator, if you will, is always running. Setting the device to free running on here will kind of give you some of that feeling. You also have the ability to set the fine tune marker, if you will, to kind of like lower the tone, give you some of that, more or less a dirtier sound, a dated sound, if you will, to make it more detuned or out of tune. Again, you got three oscillators to choose from. You have the ability to do, ring modulation, pulse width modulation, and FM, not to the same degree as a DX7, but you can add that into your sound, thus broadening your sound out. You have a multitude, well, not a multitude, you have a variety of filters to choose from. Your low pass, high pass, band pass, comb, and format, as well as vocal. It's going to add some texture to your sound. Then you have these over here. It's going to add more texture to your sound, giving you more flexibility. You have your LFO and different waveforms that you can use to modulate, different points of your sound. You have an arpeggiator. You have another LFO to modify the pitch, which is always cool. You have your mod matrix, if I haven't said that already. You also have two effects over here, which will give you a great deal of flexibility, especially the ability to add wave shaping to your sound. But you also have things like your chorus, your reverb, vocoder, ensemble, and so forth. And you have, three different effects that you can set up, as well as access to all of the effects that come in your Reason rack. You have a transgate here and so forth. So this is a very capable synth in its own right. Very useful. No, you don't have the ability to draw in wavetables like you would in version 3. The GUI is not as appealing, in my opinion. I think the GUI is more engaging, but again, that's because it's a updated VST. But I think overall, this is still very capable. And if you're someone that likes to program and make different sounds, you can definitely do that using this device. And you can create, some very nice patches. So I'm going to leave that be, and I'm going to go to the next one, which is Quad. Quad came out as a rack extension back in 2012, and I have to say I slept on it. I waited for a long time before I jumped on it. Then they released it as a VST, I think sometime between 2019, if not 2019, definitely 2020. Now, what makes this unique is it has more of a take from like doing phase distortion based synthesis. So think like your older Casio synthesizers back in the day. That was kind of like their alternative to FM. Rod Papin, when he created this device, went that direction. And so it's going to give you, just a different sound palette. You can do subtractive synthesis with this because you have your filters, but using that phase distortion, you're gonna build your patch and build your tone in a different way, and as a result come up with some different outcomes. You have your different waveforms to choose from, and there are a lot here. I'm not going to go through all these because it's quite a bit. I don't know if it's about, almost 200, but you have a lot, and I'm just scrolling through. But the cool part is in the ability to mess with these, accesses. So you have phase distortion. You can set up your different type. You can also set up your wave shaping. You can also have this be set to LFO using a mod matrix, so you don't have to click on it with a mouse to do that. You can set the amount of phase distortion you want. Likewise, you have your wave shaper. So that's just a quick example. But yeah, you have the different options of how your wave shaper and phase distortion interact based on the algorithms that you pick. Then again, you have two oscillators that you can use. You can adjust the pitch, semitones, fine tuning. Now here you could do oscillator drift. How much do you want? That's going to dictate the sound. You have a sub oscillator. You can set this to free running. Again, always appreciate it. You come over here. You have different filters to choose from. Now, when you get to the effects, you have two effects. Your first one is going to be, your basic chorus ensemble. The tools that you would use to basically widen your sound. And then over here, you have your delay and your reverb. You have your arpeggiation, and you can determine the play mode if you want it monophonic, polyphonic, and so forth. Portamento, you can set that up right in this corner. You have two envelopes that you can use. So, and you have your amplitude envelope over here. So, I think this is cool because it's unique. If you don't have access to like phase distortion synthesis, and that's something that you want to use, I would definitely take a look at this. You can try it out for 30 days in the shop, see if you like it, and so forth. Or you can demo it on the VST side of things and check it out. I think they give you like 30 days. I don't know if there's any real difference between the VST version of Quad and the rack extension. When I emailed Mr. Pappin, he said it basically boiled down to the outputs in the back. So if you're somebody that likes to mess with this and set it up in a modular setting, use the rack extension. If you're someone that is using more of the VST stuff, then get the VST, especially if you don't even have Reason. All right, the next one is Quad. Not Quad, pardon me, Spire. Look at me messing up already. So Spire came out as a rack extension back in 2017, and it was kind of a big deal because a lot of people were anticipating, Spire being formatted as a rack extension for Reason users. Now, interestingly enough, by the time it came out as a rack extension, Reason had the ability to do, use VSTs. So, for some people, it kind of felt like a moot point, but, then again, if you're someone who loves just the rack-based workflow, then this was a big deal. Now, again, you get 4 oscillators to work with. You can set up, the different sounds partially here in terms of like how that sound is being dictated. If you want to vowel to have more of I can't think of the term, I apologize, to more of a format filter type sound, or if you want FM, pulse width, and so forth. Now, I will say, what I don't like about this is the fact that I have to click on this knob and scroll up and down. When you click on it, there isn't a drop down menu. I'm not even clicking on the knob. I'm clicking on this icon. So I wish they could have done something to that effect. Likewise, when you go here to determine the waveform you want to use, and you have a fair amount of different waveforms you can use. But again, I have to click and then scroll up and down with the mouse to determine which, what waveform I want to use. I think it would have been easier if they gave you a drop down menu. Not a big deal, but it would be nice if they had that feature. So yeah, this will determine the waveform you want to use. This will determine like how you want to go about modifying that waveform. You have your controls, you have your phase, so you can adjust things from that nature. You can do fine tuning for your oscillator again to make it have a drift, if you will. And then here you have the wavetable mix that you can use to change the shape of the sound. You have your unison modes. You can do the detuning. You can widen. You have your filters. Again, when you do your filters, you have to click on it. And as you can see here, so I'm clicking on the type of shaping I want for the shaper. And then here, I click and I scroll and pull down to pick whether or not I want the comb, Scorpio, and so forth. So it's not a big deal, but it would be nice that if they went on ahead and did a drop down menu deal when you click on stuff. Not a big deal. You get 4 envelopes to use to do some shaping for your sounds. You get 4 LFOs to use. You get the transpose stuff. You have the ability to do pitch drifting. I'm on the same one. That's okay. And then over here, you have the ability to change, the different parts, of the synth that you want to adjust in terms of your effects, your reverb, and so forth. So everything is kind of here. You can click down and select what you want, which is convenient for your, if you want to add the stepping, the arpeggiation, you want to go into the mod matrix and so forth. So that's how you would go about doing that. I picked this up using like the points I had in the Reason store, and I waited till this was on sale. I think it's a really good sounding synthesizer. If you're not someone that's hung up on whether or not this is a rack extension versus a VST, and you just want access to the stuff so you can make your patches and have some different sounds in the rack device, I would definitely take a look at this, just because you're pretty much getting all the same features as you with the VST. Now, I will say, as somebody who demoed the VST, I prefer the layout of that better. And everything is all in one screen, so you can just kind of navigate right there and do what you need to do. So if form factor is a big deal for you, then I would go with the VST. But this is on sale, not right now, but it does go on sale, and it goes on sale cheaper than the VST. So keep that in mind too. Lastly, we have Expanse. Now, Expanse came out back in 2016, and it was kind of like the answer to Serum. So if you were a Reason user, especially back in that time, that was like the dead years for Reason, in my opinion, because from Reason 5 until about Reason 10, between those 2 updates, they really didn't give you any new instruments. So if you wanted any new sounds, you had to go get them in the rack extension store. And they didn't really have wavetable synthesis like a Serum. Serum was kind of like a big deal at this point. Serum is still dope, but definitely back then, because of its ease of use, the type of sounds you could have, and it just sounded good. This was like the response to that. This does wavetable synthesis, it does subtractive synth, and it does some additive and some FM. So you get kind of like an all-in-one package with this device. You have 4 oscillators that you can use and pick. And when they updated to version 2, they gave you the ability to put in your own wavetables. So it definitely increased the value of having this. So even if you didn't get Serum, or you didn't have access to Serum, you could turn around and buy this and use all the wavetables built from Serum, throw them in here, and do some programming. You got 4 oscillators to choose from, or 4 oscillators to work with. You have a bunch of filters, not as many as Serum by no means, but you got a nice selection to work with. And you got 2 sets of filters to choose from. You can do the routing. You have your envelopes, 3 envelopes. You have your LFOs that you can choose. You have your mod matrix here. You have your effects right here. And again, this came out during 2016. I can remember back at that point, formerly what was known as Propellerhead decided that they would give like rack extension developers the ability to, basically import your own samples into the rack extension. And that was supposed to be a really, really big deal. And it was this device and another device that was a granular synth called Proton that really took advantage of that. And I do believe that those became the templates, if you will, that Reason or Propellerhead at the time used to make Europa and Grain, because this was the wavetable side of things, and then Proton was the granular side of things. So yeah, now this has a bright sound to it. And when this came out, this definitely was more geared for the EDM crowd. You could use it for your techno, maybe some techno, trance, that sort of stuff. Your EDM definitely has a brighter sound, but if you know how to program, this is a very flexible device that you can make it sound like whatever you want it to for the most part. You have your harmonic filter section, so you can change the harmonics of this device. You have your EQ, so you can set it up that way. You have your sequencer, and you can click on the different pages. They give you 2 pages up to 16 steps. Likewise, you have your CC, gate, all that stuff that you can set up, set the modes. Now, I will say one thing I wish they would do now is make this little section bigger, but for crying out loud, back in 2016, the fact that you had wavetable synthesis in Reason and you had it available to you, it's pretty dope. Now, how does this hold up for today? Obviously, with being able to use VSTs and pretty soon VST3s inside of Reason, the need for this is kind of, not as prevalent, because now Reason has opened up all this stuff. You could bring these devices in and you can use them. And what devices like Vital, which is very powerful and free. You have 3 wavetable based oscillators and a 4th one for sampling. And you can get, it's very flexible and very powerful. And it's a lot you could do on that. But, if this is something that you already have at your disposal, this is still a very powerful tool that you can use to, make sounds, help you in your music making process and whatnot. And, I think it sounds good for what it is. If I didn't have this, would I go out and buy it now? Probably not. And that's no disrespect to the wonderful people at Blamsoft, but this being what it is, it hasn't had an update in a while, and there have been other devices that have come out that have kind of like filled in that void and taken that space. You might not need this one or want this one as much, because you have other devices available that can pretty much cover ground. But if you have this, then I think this is a good tool to use in its own right. So yeah, man, let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you have any of these rack extensions? Do you still use them? If you have them, have you moved on to something else. If you're watching this video and maybe this is your first time seeing some of these devices, you know, do you think this is something that you might get as a result of watching this video? I know I didn't do a whole lot in the sound demonstration in. Um, yeah, it's so many sounds. This would take me a lot longer, and I want to make this really quick. So yeah, let me know in the comment section what you think. Hey man, I'm Tim Keys. I'm out. Peace.